Commander Jace Calloway had seen many strange things in his years of service with the Earth Peacekeeping Force, but nothing quite like this. He stood in the middle of the barren landscape of this uncharted alien world, the sun hanging low in the sky, casting long shadows over the jagged terrain. His mission was simple: investigate a distress signal that had been sent out from an unknown source. Yet what he found was far beyond anything he expected. The distress signal led him to an ancient, crumbling structure that seemed to have been abandoned for centuries. The air was thick with dust, and the walls of the building were covered in strange symbols Jace couldn't understand. His boots echoed in the silence as he moved cautiously through the ruined halls, his rifle ready, every sense alert. As he ventured deeper into the heart of the structure, he felt a growing sense of unease. The walls were covered with alien markings, and the air smelled faintly of something sweet yet foreign. At the far end of the corridor, he found what he was looking for: a room bathed in an eerie green light, and there in the center was something, or rather, someone, trapped in an energy field. Jace stepped closer, squinting through the strange glow. His heart skipped a beat when he saw her, an alien female, her body trapped in a shimmering force field. Her delicate frame was frozen, but her eyes, glowing like twin stars, stared back at him, full of fear and something else, something he couldn't quite place. Her skin was a soft, silvery hue, almost translucent in the green light, and her long hair cascaded around her, moving as if it were underwater. But it wasn't her appearance that made Jace pause. It was the overwhelming sense of power she radiated. She wasn't just any alien. She was something ancient, something important. His mind raced with questions. Who was she? What was she doing here? And why was she trapped? He moved forward, cautiously examining the device that held her prisoner. The energy field surrounding her seemed to pulse, its power fluctuating in a rhythm he couldn't understand. It was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered, even with all their technological advancements. "Hey," Jace said, his voice echoing in the quiet room. His tone was gentle, though uncertainty laced his words. "Are you all right?" The alien female didn't respond immediately, but her eyes flickered with recognition. Her lips parted slightly, and Jace could have sworn he saw the faintest trace of a smile, though it was brief. Then, her voice rang in his mind, soft yet commanding. "You shouldn't be here." Jace froze. He hadn't heard the words, but somehow he understood them. It was telepathy, something he had only read about in ancient legends and alien texts. This alien was far more than just a prisoner. She was a force to be reckoned with. "I had to come," Jace responded, his voice steady. "I was sent here to help." "What's your name?" The alien didn't answer right away. Instead, her eyes locked onto his, searching as though evaluating his worth. After a long pause, she finally spoke, this time in words. "I am Lyra of the Zinthar." "You are not like the others." Jace's brow furrowed in confusion. "The others?" Her eyes darkened, her expression filled with sadness and something deeper, something Jace could feel in his bones. "Others who have come for power, for control. You are different. You wish to help, but it may cost you." Jace looked at her, studying her face, trying to understand the weight of her words. "I'm not here for power," he said. "I'm here to help you get out." She tilted her head slightly, as if surprised by his honesty. "Then you must release me from this trap." He moved toward the energy field, trying to make sense of the alien technology. There were no buttons, no levers, nothing he could physically manipulate. Just a series of glowing lights embedded in the walls around her. His hand hovered near the field, but he didn't dare touch it yet. Something told him that any wrong move could make things worse. "The device is ancient," Lyra said softly, as though reading his thoughts. "You must know how to disable it without causing harm." Jace wasn't sure he could do that. He had dealt with plenty of alien tech before, but this was different. This was beyond anything he had encountered. "I'll figure it out," he muttered under his breath, mostly to himself. He had no choice but to try. His mission wasn't just to find and investigate the signal. It was to help anyone who needed it, regardless of the cost. Just as his fingers brushed the edge of the energy field, the door to the room suddenly slammed open. Jace whipped around, raising his rifle in an instant. Several alien figures, hostile-looking, armed and covered in dark armor, entered the room. They moved quickly, their eyes fixed on Lyra. Jace's heart sank. He had no idea who these aliens were, but their intentions were clear. They weren't here to help. They were here to take her. perhaps for themselves or for something much worse. "Stay back," Jace growled, leveling his rifle at them. "I'll protect her." One of the aliens, taller and more imposing than the rest, stepped forward. His voice was low and menacing. "You cannot protect her. She is ours." Jace didn't hesitate. His training kicked in, and before the alien could make a move, Jace fired a warning shot, sending the others scrambling for cover. The battle had begun, and the stakes had never been higher. Lyra's voice echoed in his mind once more, but this time it was filled with urgency. "They are coming for me. You must hurry." Jace nodded, turning back to the energy field. He didn't know how long he had, but he knew he couldn't waste any more time. If he was going to save her, he needed to act fast. As the sound of laser fire echoed around him, Jace finally found the right sequence of actions, pressing a series of symbols hidden beneath the surface of the field. With a low hum, the energy field flickered and collapsed, releasing Lyra from her trap. She fell into Jace's arms, her body warm and surprisingly light. For a moment they stood there, eyes locked, both knowing that their journey had only just begun. Jace Calloway stood still, his heart pounding in his chest as the last of the hostile aliens fell to the ground. His rifle was still aimed, his finger hovering over the trigger, but the room was silent now. The battle was over, at least for the moment. Lyra, still in his arms, had been freed from the energy trap, but the escape was far from over. Jace could hear the sounds of other alien soldiers closing in from the hallways, and time was running out. "Are you all right?" Jace asked, his voice soft yet urgent. He gently helped Lyra to her feet, careful not to cause any more harm. The alien woman was delicate, but her eyes shone with an inner strength Jace had never seen before. There was more to her than met the eye, something powerful, something beyond human understanding. Lyra nodded, though her face was tense with worry. "I am fine, for now. But they will return. We have no time to lose." Her voice carried an unspoken warning. She wasn't just talking about the physical danger. There was something deeper in her words, something Jace couldn't quite grasp. Jace glanced back at the doorway. The aliens they had fought were only the first wave. More were surely on their way, and he had no idea what they wanted with Lyra. All he knew was that he had to get her to safety. But where? Where can we go? He asked, his gaze meeting hers. "We're trapped in here." Lyra's eyes darkened. "There is a place, a sanctuary, hidden from their reach. But it is far." "Far?" Jace repeated, his brow furrowing. "How far?" She didn't answer immediately, instead walking over to the remains of the alien soldiers. She knelt down, examining one of their weapons. Jace followed, not sure what she was doing. Then, without warning, she tore a small device from one of the soldiers' armor and placed it on her own wrist. "It is a locator," she explained. "They will track us unless I disable their ability to follow." Jace watched as Lyra's fingers danced over the device. It hummed for a moment, then shut off with a soft click. The air in the room seemed to shift, as if the threat of pursuit had momentarily faded. "How do you know how to do that?" Jace asked, surprised. Lyra's abilities were becoming even more mysterious by the second. Her gaze met his, and she smiled softly. "My people have had centuries to perfect such things. I was trained for moments like this." Jace didn't know whether to be awed or worried. There was no doubt that Lyra was far from ordinary, but the question lingered. Why had she been captured? Who were these aliens, and why were they hunting her? "Let's move," Lyra said, snapping Jace out of his thoughts. "The more time we waste, the closer they get." He nodded, grabbing his rifle once more and following her as she led the way through the ancient structure. They moved swiftly, though Jace could sense her exhaustion. It wasn't just the physical strain from the battle, there was something more. Lyra was trying to hide it, but he could see the way her steps faltered just slightly, the way her breath quickened when she didn't think he was looking. "Are you sure you're okay?" Jace asked again, his concern growing. Lyra gave him a sharp look, but her expression softened when she saw the genuine worry in his eyes. "I am not like you, Jace. I am more fragile than you think." Jace's heart tightened at her words, but before he could respond, she stopped, raising a hand. "Quiet," she whispered. Jace's body went tense, his hand instinctively gripping his rifle. He strained his ears, listening carefully for any sound. There it was, the faintest scrape of metal on stone, the sound of footsteps moving closer. "They are near," Lyra said softly, her voice full of urgency. "We need to get out of here now!" Without another word, she turned and ran, and Jace followed. They moved through the corridors at a breakneck pace, ducking into shadows whenever they heard someone approach. Jace's mind raced as they moved. What was Lyra really running from? And who were the aliens who pursued her so relentlessly? As they rounded a corner, Lyra suddenly stumbled, her knees buckling beneath her. Jace rushed forward, catching her just in time. "Lyra!" he exclaimed, his voice filled with concern. He held her steady as she tried to regain her footing, but it was clear that she was weakening. "I'm fine," she insisted, though her voice was strained. "I just need a moment." Jace didn't believe her. The way she was leaning against him, struggling to catch her breath, it was obvious that the fight had taken more out of her than she was willing to admit. "We're getting out of here," Jace said firmly, helping her to her feet. "Stay with me. I won't let them get you." Her eyes softened at his words, but she didn't protest. Instead, she nodded, allowing him to support her as they continued their escape. For what felt like hours, they moved in silence, hiding whenever they could, carefully avoiding detection. The ancient structure seemed to stretch on forever, its labyrinthine halls twisting and turning in every direction. Jace had no idea how long they had been running, but the moment they reached the exit, he realized that they hadn't just been escaping the aliens, they had been escaping something far worse. They finally emerged into the open air, the alien landscape stretching out before them. The planet's twin moons hung high in the sky, casting an eerie light over the rocky terrain, but the beauty of the scene didn't ease the tension in Jace's chest. "Where are we going now?" he asked, his eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of movement. Lyra turned to him, her face set in determination. "We need to reach the sanctuary. It is the only place where I can be safe." Jace nodded, his grip tightening on his rifle. He didn't know what was waiting for them at the sanctuary, but he knew one thing for sure. He would protect Lyra, no matter what it took. The journey to the sanctuary was far from easy. They trekked across the rugged landscape, the hostile world around them seeming to close in with every step. The air grew colder as they moved, and Jace couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every noise, every rustling in the distance made his heart race. But through it all, Lyra remained calm. She had become more than just a mysterious alien to him. She had become someone he needed to protect, not just for the mission, but because he couldn't imagine life without her. As they continued their journey, Jace's thoughts drifted back to the questions that still lingered in his mind. Who were these aliens chasing them? And what was Lyra's true purpose on this planet? The answers would have to wait. For now, all that mattered was keeping her safe. The winds howled across the barren alien landscape as Jace and Lyra made their way towards the sanctuary. The night had fallen, casting a pale blue glow from the twin moons above. Every step they took felt like it carried them further away from safety, yet closer to the truth of Lyra's purpose. Jace could feel the weight of her presence beside him. Though she had not spoken much since their escape from the crumbling alien structure, he could sense something had changed. Her movements were slower now, more deliberate. The exhaustion was taking its toll, but she didn't show it. Her eyes still held the same fierce determination. Jace couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. "We should rest soon," he said quietly, glancing up at the moons. "We've been moving for hours." Lyra nodded, though she didn't look at him. She was scanning the horizon, ever watchful. "We cannot stop for long," she said, her voice steady but filled with an underlying tension. "They will be close by now." Jace stopped in his tracks. The weight of her words made him pause. "Who are they, Lyra?" "Who's chasing you?" For a long moment, Lyra said nothing. Her gaze turned inward, and Jace could see the struggle in her eyes. She was torn between revealing the truth and keeping him at a distance, as if the weight of her secret might be too much for him to bear. But then, she spoke. "They are called the Zorath," Lyra said, her voice soft but filled with unmistakable anger. "A faction of my people. They have turned against us, against me." Jace felt a pang of confusion. "I thought you said you were part of an ancient, peaceful race. Why would they be after you?" Lyra's expression darkened. "Because I am not what they expected. They wanted a weapon, a tool to control the galaxy. Instead, I found the truth." She paused, her voice trembling with emotion. "The Zorath have been lying to our people for centuries. They don't seek peace, they seek domination." Jace's brow furrowed in disbelief. "But you're not like them. You're different." Lyra met his eyes, her gaze filled with sorrow. I was once their hope, but now I am their enemy. Jace swallowed hard. He had known there was more to her than met the eye, but the weight of what she was saying was almost too much to process. How could such a peaceful race turn to war? And why was Lyra at the center of it all? Before he could ask more, Lyra continued. The Zorath captured me because they feared I would reveal their truth. They know I carry the knowledge to bring them down to expose their lies, and now they will stop at nothing to destroy me. Jace's mind raced, but he didn't let the confusion overwhelm him. Instead, he reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch gentle but firm. You don't have to face this alone. Lyra looked at him, her eyes softening. For a moment, the tension between them seemed to melt away, replaced by something stronger, something unspoken. I'm not alone, she whispered. Not anymore. Just then, the sound of distant footsteps reached their ears. Jace's hand instinctively went to his rifle, but Lyra stopped him with a quick gesture. They're here, she said, her voice low. We don't have much time. Jace's heart raced as he scanned the terrain. He could see the shadowy figures of the Zorath soldiers advancing in the distance, their outlines visible in the moonlight. There were too many of them, and they were too close. We need to move, Jace urged, grabbing Lyra's arm. But Lyra shook her head. We can't outrun them, Jace. The sanctuary is our only hope. Jace's eyes flicked to the horizon. The sanctuary was still miles away, but it was their only chance. He knew that if they didn't reach it soon, the Zorath would catch up to them, and whatever secrets Lyra held would be lost forever. We'll make it, he said, determination filling his voice. Come on. Together, they sprinted across the rocky landscape, the sound of their footsteps muffled by the wind. Jace's heart pounded in his chest, not just from the effort of running, but from the weight of what was at stake. Lyra's people, his people, were on the brink of destruction, and it all depended on reaching the sanctuary before the Zorath could stop them. The chase seemed to stretch on forever. The night sky above them seemed to close in, the air growing colder with each step. Jace's legs ached, but he couldn't stop. Lyra was beside him, her breathing shallow but steady. She was holding on to the hope that they could reach the sanctuary in time. But the Zorath were closing in fast. Suddenly, a flash of light pierced the darkness, and Jace felt the ground beneath him shake. He turned in time to see a burst of energy blast into the ground just ahead of them, sending rocks and debris flying into the air. They've got a weapon, Jace shouted, pulling Lyra down to the ground to shield her. Lyra's eyes were wide with fear, but she didn't hesitate. She rose to her feet, her hands glowing with an intense otherworldly energy. They want to play this game? She muttered, her voice full of resolve. Before Jace could stop her, Lyra raised her arms, and the ground beneath the Zorath soldiers erupted in a wave of energy. The soldiers were thrown back by the force of her power, their weapons falling from their hands. Jace watched in awe as Lyra used her abilities, not to attack, but to defend. She wasn't just protecting herself, she was protecting them both. But the Zorath were relentless. More soldiers appeared from the shadows, their eyes burning with anger. Jace could feel the intensity of the battle around them, the air thick with energy and chaos. He knew they couldn't hold out much longer. We have to keep moving, Jace urged, pulling Lyra back toward the sanctuary. It's just ahead. They ran again, but the Zorath were closing in, their weapons raised. Just as Jace thought they were done for, a sharp whistle sounded through the air, and suddenly a series of explosions erupted around them, sending the Zorath soldiers scattering. Jace looked up in surprise to see a group of humans. His team, led by Captain Elias, charging toward them, guns blazing. Get to the sanctuary, Captain Elias shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. Jace didn't need any more encouragement. With the Zorath in retreat, they rushed toward the sanctuary, the entrance finally coming into view. The doors to the sanctuary slid open, and Jace and Lyra stepped inside, their breaths heavy with exhaustion. Inside, the air was warm, and the soft hum of energy filled the room. As the doors closed behind them, sealing out the Zorath, Jace and Lyra exchanged a look of quiet relief. It's not over yet, Lyra said, her voice barely a whisper. But this is a safe place for now. Jace nodded. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain. He would protect Lyra with everything he had, and together, they would uncover the truth about her people and stop the Zorath from destroying everything.